Europe's reputation as a producer of high-quality, innovative chemical products is recognised the world over. But is it enough to survive in what is an increasingly competitive and dramatically changing sector? What are the challenges facing Europe's petrochemical industry, and is enough being done to overcome them? To find out, Inch travelled to Runcorn to talk with Tom Crotty.
I think the European petrochemical industry has got a number of challenges, but for me, by far and away, the biggest one is really around energy cost. I mean, we are a hugely energy-intensive industry, and the cost of the energy made up of both its base raw material cost, but also the taxation, is something that we need to be very, very careful about how that is managed within Europe if we're to have a good, successful future.
And if it is managed correctly, what strengths will the European petrochemical industry be looking to exploit?
I think Europe's major strength in petrochemicals is the technologies that we've developed. We've got some very, very cutting-edge technologies. We've got some excellent products. Our customers are looking for us to provide them with highly technical solutions, particularly in areas like energy saving and lightweighting. Look at the development of lightweight polymers that are going into things like the automotive and the aerospace industry. That's where Europe has its real strength. That's what we need to play to, and we need to then couple those strengths with a more competitive energy base. Over the last 20 years, we've had a situation where there's been a huge advantage for the Middle East through their very low-cost gas. That advantage is now being lost, and actually, if you now look today, the US and the Middle East are about on a par, whereas Europe is looking at energy costs that are pretty well double the price that we're paying for energy in America. And the impact of that on a very energy-intensive industry like ours is huge. If you look at a plant like the one behind me here at Runcorn, this plant is using about the same amount of power every day as the city of Liverpool. So if that is uncompetitive energy, it's very hard for us to have a successful business going forward. So we actually need to do a lot of work, particularly with the politicians in Europe, to make some changes in this area.
So what does Tom think those politicians in Europe should be doing to address the issue?
What we're looking for the European Commission to do is to recognise that we really are at a crossroads now in terms of energy policy. We've got to the point where we have a lot of energy taxation, a lot of carbon taxation in Europe. And I think the crossroads point is because we now have a choice. We can either keep imposing more and more taxation on European industry, which will drive up energy costs, it will make us uncompetitive, we'll end up closing operations in Europe, those same products will be made in the US or in the Middle East, and actually what you'll end up doing is not reducing the carbon burden at all, you'll increase it because some of that production is going to come from less efficient plants.
A perfect example of this disparity can be seen in the production of PVC.
This plant at Runcorn is making chlorine for the PVC industry. PVC being made in China actually emits about 7 times the amount of carbon versus the processes we're using here in Europe. Now, therefore, if you make it uncompetitive to make that product in Europe, it'll get imported from China, and the net result is more carbon, not less. So the bureaucrats will not get what they want, which is lower carbon. They'll actually get higher carbon, but on the back of that, they'll also lose jobs and lose growth. We're basically saying we're at the crossroads now where you could go down that vicious cycle of decline, more and more taxation, less and less jobs, more and more imports, or you could choose to turn the other way on the crossroads into a virtuous circle of growth. If they reduce the burden, if they make us competitive on energy, we can actually afford to invest more in research and development, in new products and new technologies. That creates growth, that creates jobs, and it will allow us to invest in new technologies, which will actually also reduce carbon loading.
So does Tom think the European Commission is taking note of these points?
I think there are signs within the Commission that some people are listening. I think the Energy Commission, the Industry Commissioners, they're listening. They understand this. We've still got a lot of work to do on things like the Environment Commission to really get them to understand that just whacking on more environmental taxation is not going to solve the environmental burden. It's actually going to add to it, not remove it.
Its long-term future clearly relies on reduced taxation. But does Tom see any other factors having an impact on the health of the European petrochemicals industry?
I think there are some massive changes taking place in the global energy markets, the biggest of which, of course, is the development of shale gas in the United States.
And with the production of a tonne of ethylene costing Ineos's French-based OMP business twice as much as their American colleagues, And with the company's Grangemouth cracker facing possible extinction in 2017 unless it finds an alternative feedstock, it's little wonder that the company is looking to Europe to embrace the shale gas phenomenon.
I think shale gas is providing a really great opportunity for Europe right now, and one that we have to make the most of, we have to exploit. Our plants tend to be at the very energy intensive end of the spectrum. We are using a lot of energy, we're using a lot of feedstock from currently the North Sea. Now the problem with that is the feedstocks in the North Sea are actually declining. So for a plant like Grangemouth, where we rely on that feed, and particularly the ethane coming out of the North Sea, we've now only got enough feedstock to run that cracker at almost half the rate that we could run it. So that's where shale gas makes a huge difference. Right now we're investing in bringing American shale gas into Europe, initially into our plant in Norway, and we're spending a lot of money there to allow us to import that gas. That will be transformational for the Rafnes plant in Norway. We're hoping that we can do the same in Grangemouth, because by 2017 we've got some big decisions to make, because by then we will have to renew or find new sources of feedstock for that plant. What we're hoping is that we can spend the money on new import terminals, etc. at Grangemouth, but only if we can sort the cost base of that plant out. If we can do that, then we can do the same in Grangemouth as we're currently doing in Norway.
Tom is convinced the future of the European sector lies firmly in the hands of the politicians, who can either maintain high levels of taxation and deny the industry the benefits of shale gas, or who can ease the crippling financial burden and embrace the game-changing potential of an untapped natural resource.
We've now got, because of shale gas, huge numbers of investments in petrochemicals going on. The actual installed base of petrochemicals in America will increase by more than 30% in the next 1 to 2 years with new investment. We could have the same in Europe, but only if European governments actually do something to make that happen and allow us to get on with exploiting shale gas. It could be a transformational development for the European petrochemicals industry.